Hello and welcome to the Idaho Reports podcast. I'm Logan Finney. As you likely know, incumbent President Joe Biden has announced he is no longer seeking the Democratic nomination for the presidential election in 2024, and the party has rapidly coalesced around Vice President Kamala Harris as the new nominee. Joining us to discuss the news of the week is Representative Lauren Necochea, who is not just a Democratic state representative for Boise, she is also the chair of the Idaho Democratic Party. Representative Necochea, thanks for joining us.
For having me, Logan.
So first things first, where were you on Sunday afternoon when we all suddenly found out that President Biden was no longer seeking re-election, despite weeks and weeks of conversation in the public the public eye over the last couple of weeks about his future as a candidate?
I was at the YMCA doing a class, and then when I came out, I had some texts waiting for me about the big news.
And what was your kind of immediate reaction in the moment?
Felt bittersweet, and I think it's an opportunity that we're seizing as a party that's exciting, and it is just simply bittersweet to see President Biden step aside after such a long career of dedicated public service. And after what he accomplished in these last 4 years, pulling our economy back from the brink, passing really important landmark legislation that's going to impact Americans for a generation, whether it's the infrastructure package or the Inflation Reduction Act that's bringing all these clean energy jobs and energy independence to the country, the CHIPS Act that's revitalizing American manufacturing. There are just so many positive impacts that the Biden administration had over the past few years that it makes me grateful for that service and the benefits that we'll all reap from that. And it's also just makes me proud and I'd admire just the noble, selfless decision he made to step aside when he thought that was the best thing for the nation.
And now you, as well as the party more generally, have coalesced around the Vice President, Kamala Harris. She is kind of presumed now to be the nominee heading into your party's convention next month. Of course, Twitter has been ablaze over the last couple of days, and I've seen lots of talk from strategists and various campaign-related people. From your position as a state party chair, what did kind of that next 12 to 24, 48 hours look like? What were you hearing from your counterparts at the national level, as well as from kind of Democrats, the grassroots folks across Idaho?
Was fascinating, and I don't think anybody could have predicted just how powerful the groundswell of support was going to be for Vice President Harris. I don't think we knew it until the change was made, and then just everyone wanted to step up and support her. Within a few hours, I was on a call of the top party officials across the state, and we were having a conversation, and just officials after official were just speaking up and talking about how she was our candidate for just so many reasons. She's a fantastic candidate. She has the skills. She has the all of the credentials and the experience you would want, from being a prosecutor to an attorney general to a U.S. senator to being the vice president, which is the understudy for the job. This is why we have a vice president. So we have someone who's at the ready. So she was voted in by the American people as our vice president to be our backup president. And then she was voted by the primary voters this year. Again, she was on the Biden-Harris ticket, and she was, voted to in that way. She got that support to be our candidate. And there was no one called Idaho and said, "Hey, are you going to endorse her?" Or contacted our convention delegates. But when I started reaching out to them, it was just very clear that within our state, all of our delegates wanted to support her. It was the natural step, and you see the groundswell of the enthusiasm outside the party structure as well. $81 million of fundraising within just 24 hours, and that keeps going. And 62% of those donors were first time donors. So we're bringing new people to the party and to the campaign, and it's very exciting. And it has MAGA Republicans very nervous.
Yeah, I want to kind of hone in on one of those points you made there on how this intersects with the primary, or in Idaho, the caucus that was held with the absence of a formal state-run primary. I've seen what could be genuine or could be some cynical takes online from some of the Republican operatives saying, "Oh, how dare the Democrats suddenly replace Joe Biden after they held all of these primaries, and do the votes of all of those people no longer matter?" What's your response to that take I've seen?
I think this is why the process works the way it does, is that we don't just vote, Idaho's voting for Biden. We vote for delegates who then can have that flexibility and make the decisions that need to be made in dynamic political processes, which is what happens sometimes. Sometimes a president, someone who's at the top of the ticket, can't serve, or it doesn't make sense for them to serve. And and I think what is making the MAGA Republicans panic is that their candidate, since just this year in recent months, was found guilty of 34 felonies. He was found guilty of rape by a jury, and there's no way he's dropping out because he's running for himself. And and he picked one of the most extreme and experienced people he could have picked for his vice presidential candidate. JD Vance is only dropping in popularity since the RNC convention. And so Republicans are stuck with this drag on their ticket, and so they're coming swinging at us. I think because of the unpopularity of what they have to contend with on their side.
All right. Well, looking forward to the DNC, the Democratic National Convention. You'll be headed there as a party delegate, as the state party chair, along with a few other party officers, and the actual delegates that were assigned to the Biden-Harris ticket in that primary process. What are you looking forward to as you guys head off to Chicago, and what do you expect that convention process to look like? And I guess we kind of already have an idea, because I believe a majority of the delegates have already publicly announced support for Harris at the top of the ticket.
Yes, Vice President Harris is now the presumptive nominee because it organically, the critical mass of delegates that were available, flocked to her and decided to endorse her. So it is an open process. Someone else could still throw their hat in the ring. Joe Manchin was considering it. It was reported. But the fact of the matter is that all of the top Democrats in the nation have endorsed her and want to see her win. So that's where we're at. We're united as a party behind her because she's such a strong candidate. So it is an open process, but it just happens to be that the candidate that everyone wants is Vice President Harris. I'm expecting, this will be my first convention, but I'm expecting just a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy. And I think it's going to be a fun time. And I think voters across the nation will be tuning in and hearing messages about what Democrats have done and want to continue to do to make life better for Americans. We want to protect the Affordable Care Act and make it better. And recent gains like reducing the cost of prescription drugs are just one example of how we can continue to make progress on making healthcare affordable for people. We're just going to keep talking about the solutions we have and how we make life better for Americans, and that's going to contrast to the RNC convention that was about fear, hate, mass deportations of people who maybe are different than us, and that's what voters are going to see, and I think they're going to respond positively to what they hear coming out of Chicago.
As the 27 Idaho delegates head to the DNC, what are you guys looking for in a potential vice presidential pick from Harris? That's kind of the next step. Currently, on Wednesday, as we're talking, it has not been announced. Who knows when that'll happen between now and the convention? What are you and the Idaho Democrats looking for in a potential vice presidential pick from Harris?
Yeah. I speak for myself that that we have a deep bench. I think we have some really strong Democratic senators, Democratic governors who would be excellent additions to the ticket. So there's no shortage of fantastic options. In comparison to the Republican side, where Trump picked someone who's been in elected office for 2 years, I think, and is deeply unpopular and has a track record of his extreme positions, including supporting a national abortion ban. I am very comfortable with our options, and I know we'll get someone good. I think it would be great to have someone, a Democratic governor from a swing state who can help us bring it home would be a fantastic option. But I'm feeling good that it's going to be someone fantastic, no matter what.
As we look to November, are there any particular unique factors in Idaho that you think benefit a Harris candidacy over a Biden candidacy? Do you think that this change has any particular implications for Idaho if the Democratic nominee is successful in 2024?
I would say that I do think Idaho's growing Latino population is going to be looking at, Vice President Kamala Harris as the candidate and contrasting it with what they saw on the RNC convention floor with those people waving the mass deportation signs that would, rip families apart, take away our neighbors, our local business owners, and just wreak havoc on our economy and our workforce. And I also think we're going to see just more young Idaho voters get engaged. If you're watching social media, there's so much excitement about Kamala Harris. And we know young voters, when they look at the issues, the Democratic Party resonates with them because we're serious about the things that they care about. We want to address climate change. We don't want to just shrug it away. We support economic opportunities through education. And that's looking at Idaho, where a majority of Republicans keep voting against the launch scholarships that are allowing high school seniors to go on and get a degree in a in-demand career or go to a trade school to get the skills for an in-demand career. It's because of our small Democratic caucus that we've been able to get those investments enacted and then funded. And so I think as the more young people get engaged and start asking questions about what they're seeing on social media and learning more about the policies, the more they're going to see that that Idaho Democrats are supporting the policies that are going to make their lives better and that are going to help them thrive in the future and earn a family-sustaining wage and be able to put a roof over their heads and just be able to thrive. So I think that engagement is only going to help us here in Idaho, where we have legislative races that can be won or lost by 100 votes, a dozen votes, sometimes 6 votes, 9 votes. I mean, we've seen some fantastically close races, and I'm excited about reaching more young voters and getting them engaged because the decisions that we're making today are going to impact their lives. So many of my colleagues in the Idaho legislature, I think, are out of touch, and they've lived their lives. So many of them are retired. They're not thinking about what it is to be a 20-year-old looking at a career ahead of them and being worried about how they can build a family and just afford to live. And so it's the more we have young people asking these questions and engaged and voting, the better the policies we're going to be able to pass and the more Idaho can thrive.
Democrats always, of course, kind of talk about their advantages with younger people, and we don't always see youth turnout matching up with those expectations. This is certainly a year where your party has put in the groundwork to be in a position to take advantage of this swell of enthusiasm. Of course, you guys have candidates running in all of the legislative districts for the first time in my memory, anyway. You have David Roth and Kaylee Peterson, who are repeat congressional candidates, so they have a little bit of name recognition in their areas. Do you think in November we will see a commensurate increase in youth turnout because of the switch from a Biden candidacy to Harris? And do you think that'll benefit you guys here in Idaho specifically?
That's what we're working to make happen. The Idaho Democratic Party is mounting its comeback. We know we're underdogs. We're clear-eyed about that fact that we're underdogs in this state, but we're mounting a comeback because it is so critical. So we're doing things like finding a candidate to run in every single legislative district because we need someone to stand up at those candidate community forums and say, why did you vote to ban books? to the Republican candidate. They need to call the Republican candidate out on the fact that our abortion ban is so extreme that women are being airlifted out of state for emergency care. Now we got a short-term temporary reprieve that means fewer women are being airlifted out of state for emergency reproductive care, but it's still absolutely unacceptable. And that's part of the reason we've been able to recruit so many candidates. We have a candidate, Joseph Messerly out in eastern Idaho, whose mother is a librarian. And when his representative, Kevin Andrus, voted to jail librarians over controversial books, he said, okay, that's it. That's enough. I can't just sit here and fume. I'm going to run for office. I'm going to give voters an opportunity to vote for something else. And so when you see how far the Idaho supermajority, Republican supermajority has gone to where women are being airlifted. They now have a platform that attacks the practices that make in vitro fertilization possible. They've empowered the book banners to sue libraries. And then they've sabotaged our supplemental school levies and underfunded our schools from a state level so badly that we have schools closing all over the state this year. And it's enough is enough, is what Idaho Democrats are saying in their communities and across the state. And that's why they're running in record numbers, and they're knocking on doors, and they're talking to voters. And this is a momentum we need to build to get back to balance in Idaho. What we have right now is not healthy, where one party has 82% of the seats in the Idaho legislature, and then Idahoans are dealing with the consequences of unaffordable housing, difficulty accessing healthcare, and all of these extreme policies that make Idaho less livable.
All right. Well, Representative Lauren Necochea, State Party Chair for the Idaho Democrats, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me, Logan.
Programming support is provided by the Idaho Humanities Council, deepening understanding of the shared human experience by connecting people with ideas and local public programs exploring history, law, literature, and citizenship through the humanities.
Presentation of Idaho Reports on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.